So you know when you hire a Google Ads agency and you expect them to be the experts handling everything for you, but then after a little while things start to feel off. You know, your campaigns aren't getting the results that you expected in the time frame you were promised, and it's not just you. So it turns out there are a few things that agencies don't tell you deliberately in the sales process that could actually make or break your success. And so in this episode, I'll walk you through those 5 important things that Google Ads agencies tend to leave out of the sales process and the questions you can ask them to help you get way more from your campaigns. So if you're new here, my name is Josiah Roche, and I've helped over 200 businesses generate more than $73 million in revenue through Google Ads by optimizing their campaigns and cutting out that waste that agencies kind of, don't talk about. And if you want to get real results without wasting time or money, let's dive in. So number 1 is you might not know who's actually managing your account. So say you've signed up with a Google Ads agency, and during the sales process, you probably spoke to someone really experienced, like maybe it was a senior strategist or an expert, and they seem to get what your business needed right now, right? So, but the thing is that most people don't realize is that after you sign the contract, that same person you spoke to is not the one handling your account. So instead, it could be passed off to a junior team member or someone outsourced, right? Completely. And when that happens, things get really tricky. The new person managing your campaigns might not have the same experience or understanding of your business as the first person you spoke with. It's kind of like expecting like a top chef to cook your meal, but you get the intern instead, right? So that's why it's super important to ask up front, who's going to manage your account every single day or whenever they manage it, right? What's their experience? How long have they been doing it? Have they been doing it for your industry long enough? What kind of results or metrics do they focus on? And this is where what we call the halo effect comes in. So basically, because you liked the senior strategist that you first spoke with, you might assume that the rest of the team is just as good as them. And that's the halo effect, right? But that's not always true, as you know. So the halo effect is a bias where we let our overall impression of someone affect how we judge their specific abilities, and kind of we associate their abilities with, other people in their team in this case. So while the person who sold you on the service might be really amazing and great, and, they had a silver tongue and talked you through it, it doesn't mean everyone else on the team is going to be the same level. So make sure you know exactly who's going to be doing the actual work on your ads, especially since you're trusting them with your money. Number 2 is the handover process is usually a mess, right? So once you've signed on, another thing that happens is the sales person steps back and the fulfillment team takes over, right? Normal thing, you kind of get it. And this is where things get messy sometimes with obviously inexperienced agencies who aren't set up really well, is often there's not much communication between those two teams, the sales team and the fulfillment team, which means the person now running your ads might not fully understand your business goals, just like what you spoke in the sales process. Everything you spoke during that first sales pitch or whatever probably wasn't jotted down well and taken notes to the fulfillment team and properly briefed the fulfillment team on that. So it's kind of like playing, telephone. So by the time the info gets passed along to the very end, important details get lost and it leads to confusion for everyone, especially yourself, that you've already given all this information to. Maybe you told the salesperson your goal is to boost sales for a specific product line that you have, but the fulfillment team didn't get the memo in that case. So because of this, it's really important to ask how the handover works at the agency. Is there a clear system in place? Will the salesperson stay involved to make sure that everything's clear within the first couple of weeks? If there's no solid plan, then you'll get delays and mistakes are almost guaranteed. And this ties into what we call the planning fallacy. So the planning fallacy is when people underestimate how much time, effort, and resources a task will actually take. So when communication is really bad, handovers are unclear and the problem gets even worse, and then no one's happy after that point. So you're going to make sure that there's a smooth transition between the teams to avoid headaches later on. And that's not your job. That's just your job to ask how it works, right? Number 3 is the fancy reports you receive doesn't always mean results, right? And I'll explain. So agencies love sending over reports filled with data like impressions, clicks, conversion rates, which is good depending on what the conversion is. And all those numbers look super, super impressive, right? But the thing is, just because the numbers are really high and flashy and you've got a lot of plus percentages and it's all looking up and green, the numbers don't mean that you're hitting your business goals. So a lot of times, and you might get this hunch as well, that you're not seeing all these results in your bank account because these reports mainly focus on vanity metrics. So numbers that sound really cool, but don't necessarily lead to more sales or leads or bookings, right? So what matters is digging deeper and asking for reports that tie directly to your main goals that you spoke about during the sales process. For example, if your goal is to increase revenue, you need reports showing how much sales you made that came from the ads, not just how many people clicked on them, not that vanity stuff that didn't even matter to you at the end of the day. So some agencies gives you access to dashboards like Google Looker Studio, which is great for transparency. But the thing is, if you don't know how to read that data and understand and interpret, then it can feel really overwhelming and you won't really know if your campaigns are even working. And you've probably already experienced this, right? So this taps into what we call the availability heuristic. And it's the tendency to focus on easy to understand metrics, even if they aren't the ones that matter most. So for example, impressions or clicks might seem useful because they're simple to grasp, right? But they don't always show you how effective your campaign actually is. So make sure that you're asking for clarity on metrics that actually impact your bottom line and how those clicks even, translated into that. Unless it's very, very difficult for you to track the real conversion event, like the transaction event, which is unlikely. It's very easy to track that. Or the lead capture event, which is like a form being filled out, which is super easy to track and where that came from. If that's very hard to do and then, all you're relying on is clicks and impressions, then that might be a tougher conversation to have, but at least the agency can explain that. And if they don't, then they're probably not as experienced as what they seem like in that sales process. So number 4 is the person managing your ads might not be the one writing them. So agencies often actually outsource the ad copywriting to a different team or department within the agency. And while that might seem fine at first, it creates this huge disconnect because the person managing your ad and the people writing the ad copy, if the person running your ads doesn't really understand your audience that well and how your business is run, what makes you think that they're going to run your ads well? Just looking at numbers, pure numbers and data, right? Which can be done, but it's just like it'll create a bigger disconnect in terms of the conversion events and the reports between you and the business. So it's kind of like running a restaurant and the chef has never tasted the food. And that's basically what happens when the person managing your ads isn't involved in the copywriting process, right? So they miss out on the little details that can improve the performance. And this ties directly to the search keywords that they're bidding on and the audience signals and in-market segments and things like that. If the person who is managing your ads does not write the ads, then Jesus Christ, like what are they going to know when they're trying to connect with your audience, right? It's going to be harder. So this disconnect also can lead to something called the curse of knowledge. So it's a bias where one person assumes the other person knows as much as they do, right? So the copywriter might not fully understand your business's unique selling points or target audience. So the messaging might not hit home as much for your customers. And inversely is true. The person managing your ads that doesn't even write the ads, isn't really going to understand your customers that well and therefore not going to choose the right keywords, not going to choose the right audience signals, all that kind of stuff. So it's worth asking if the person managing your ads is the person writing the copy itself, or at least working closely with the copywriting team. This helps to keep everything coherent, congruent, consistent, making sure that everything is aligned. Number 5 is your account manager is juggling lots of clients. I mean, 20 plus clients. So most agencies won't actually tell you how many accounts each account manager is handling or each like Google Ads strategist or whatever is handling. So in reality, it's actually between 10 and 20 and 30 accounts. I've heard as much as 50 accounts at one stage. I don't even know how they bloody manage that. That's way, way too much. And with that kind of workload, it's actually impossible for a human being to deep dive into each one of their clients in a very qualitative approach, like they're spending quality time on their clients. It's impossible. How are they going to find the time in the week? They only spend like an hour on each client each week. Like it's not enough time to actually go through all the clients in a meaningful way that gets to resonate with them in a deeper level and suggest actually deeper insights and deeper like suggestions on new landing pages or things like that. It's never going to happen. So another thing is there's also a chance that there's an inexperienced team manager being trained on your account, like from scratch. And many agencies don't actually invest in regular training with their teams. So you could end up with someone with really outdated methods, or they're brand new and they're just learning ads for the first time, and you're the guinea pig. Your kind of account is the guinea pig there. So all of this ties into what's called the bandwidth bias. So we tend to think that people can handle more than they realistically can. And it's easy to assume that just because someone's capable, they can juggle multiple tasks or clients without any drop in quality, which is just not true. You and I both know that, right? There's law of diminishing returns. And when an account manager has too many clients, they're stretched too thin, your campaigns suffer. So it's important to ask, how many accounts is your manager handling right now? How much are they responsible for? How much time do they actually spend on your account? How much quality hours? Which the quality hours is where it's all at. And a lot of ad managers don't want to tell you this because, you know, it's bad for business. Obviously, they only spend a couple of hours, if that, each week on your account, like 1 hour. And it doesn't sound good in the sales process, does it? Right? You want that quality at the end of the day. So those are the 5 things. After hearing all of this, it's clear that working with the Google Ads agency isn't always straightforward as it seems. And there are a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that can really affect your results. And not all of them are obvious when you first sign up. And that's totally okay. You know, everyone goes through this kind of process. So the main takeaway here is just to stay curious and ask questions. Make sure that you don't assume everything's running smoothly just because they knocked it out of the park with the sales process. You know, you might be getting reports and check-ins regularly, which will be amazing if that's a good sign, because not a lot of agencies do that. And if they're not doing that, all the more reason to ask a lot of questions. So dig deeper, make sure that you know who's actually handling your account. Don't be afraid to push for clarity on what's actually driving your results, because it's your money. So that's all we've got time for today. I hope that was super valuable and you've got some questions at the top of your mind to ask your agency. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this has given you some ideas on what to ask your agency. If you've got any thoughts or questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.